The other day, I learned that taking a long time to fall asleep is called sleep latency, which is just the funniest thing to me, to be honest. Me, tossing and turning until 2 a.m. The lag. It's weird because I can nap really easily, but night sleep's impossible. I have to drug myself. Napping is easy because your brain is connecting to the sleep server at low traffic hours for your region. When everyone is trying to get on the sleep server during high traffic hours, night in your region, the lag is at its worst and many people can't even connect to the server at all. That's why falling asleep at night is hard. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Love how this whole new people coming to Tumblr now situation has exactly the vibe of strangers showing up in the saloon of an old western town and stepping on the creaking floorboard. Listen up, stranger. Since you already stumbled in here, there's a few things you should know. First of all, this is a lawless land. There is no algorithm, and there are no ways to control which posts get traction. They do, or they don't. Second, we do not do well with influencers here. You can try, but you won't last long. They never do. Third, no one trusts a stranger who hides behind a default icon and only watches from afar. We have dealt with those before, and it did cost us. If you want to gain trust, talk to and support your fellas, and they will eventually return the favor. Finally, we like real fights in here. This is not a place of where you get unalived. This is a place where you die. The word garbage sounds like it should mean clothing. It does! Or rather, it does come from garb. Garbage originally meant the small fabric scraps left over from tailoring, all the tiny bits that were too small to cut a pattern piece from. Back when you generally bought fabric by the yard from a draper and then took it to a tailor to be made up, keeping the garbage was the tailor's prerequisite. Unscrupulous tailors were accused of deliberately cutting to maximize the garbage, which still had various uses in tailoring, as padding or for backing buttons, and could also be sold for making paper. That is delightful information. Oh my god. Oh, that's my new favorite bit of trivia. Thank you so much. I told my GF that I was having an episode earlier, and she replied, "Is it the beach episode?" And it shocked me so much that it grounded me immediately. Got asked by a nurse at psych ward, "Are you like legit sad?" as I was sobbing on a chair. Made me stop crying because I was so perplexed. I want you all to know that this is like a legit strategy that's taught to people, LMAO. I.e., say something so fucking stupid or absurd that it distracts the person's brain so much that it drags them back and grounds them. Like, people are actually taught to do this. UC or ER. I stepped on a bee. Urgent care. I stepped on a beehive. Emergency care. I need antibiotics. Urgent care. I need anti-venom. Emergency care. UTI. Urgent care. MRI. Emergency care. Thump. Urgent care. Thump, thump, thump. Emergency care. This is actually so helpful because as an American living in late-stage capitalism, where most people have zero health coverage except for the emergency room, the entire purpose of the ER has lost all meaning on most people. I love that we're still learning shit about this world we're in. Spiders sing, fish chirp and enjoy tummy rubs, trees feed each other, mushrooms can talk, rats giggle, crows play games. If you leave a hamster wheel in the woods, mice will run in it. And despite all focus on the contrary, if you leave a handful of human beings alone with the opportunity to do good and be kind, they will. I love this fucking planet so damn much. All the major socials? This fucking website will never die. For future confused Tumblr cockroaches, this post is about Facebook and its affiliated sites, Instagram and WhatsApp, temporarily crashing on October 4th, 2021. We all gather together to celebrate our refusal to fucking die and put a collective middle finger up to Mark Zuckerberg. Like or reblog to flip Mark Zuckerberg off and receive good vibes. Additional context. Apparently this outage is global, longest thus far in Facebook's history, and follows close on the heels of a whistleblower coming forward with proof of Facebook knowing the way their sites run causes harm. Yep, I remember that day pretty well. I was pretty grateful that Tumblr didn't die amongst all of those, but WhatsApp being down really sucked. Well, it's a year later, so happy October 4th! Thinking about the time 2 years ago in AP US history when we had to answer if we thought Lincoln should be regarded as good or bad, and I said, I don't think anyone can be labeled good or bad with a simple binary. People are just too complex. I think it's more constructive to recognize both the achievements and faults of a person together, and to uphold the good they put into the world while condemning their issues, and try to move forward with that knowledge without putting them on a pedestal. And my teacher was like, yes, this exactly! And I never admitted to anyone that I originally came to this philosophy because of Veriska, Lincoln. I read that capsaicin makes your mouth feel like it's burning because it increases your nerve sensitivity to heat, and menthol works by doing the same thing to cold. So if I eat a habanero pepper and then chew a bunch of breath mints, they'll each other out and I'll be fine. Hey, guess what hellfire tastes like? Fun fact, the nerve endings for ouch, too hot, and ouch, too cold are different, which means that they can both be activated at once without canceling out. Rip OP. Oh no, that sounds terrible! When people are like, the Hunger Games just stole the plot of Battle Royale. Like, listen, everything steals from the plot of everything. The Lion King is just furry Hamlet. Westworld is Jurassic Park, but sexier. Lost is edgy Gilligan's Island. There are no original stories, and the only good piece of media is Jennifer's Body. Michael Crichton wrote Westworld and Jurassic Park though, so he just pirated himself. Michael Crichton keeps trying to tell y'all about the evils of capitalism impeding on the progress of science. When will y'all listen? Maybe he just doesn't like theme parks. Michael Crichton in line for a roller coaster at Six Flags. Fuck this. Michael Crichton, height, 6'9". Jesus Christ, that's the height at which every roller coaster and dark ride is a decapitation threat. I learned so much on this website. A nun can be covered from head to toe in order to devote herself to God, right? But then if a Muslim girl does the same, why is she oppressed? The concept of hijab is presented in almost every religion. Stop being closed-minded and start respecting others' religion. Christian Catholic, Hindu, Muslim, Sabian, Orthodox Jew. I wish the world would understand. Good post, but I have to admit my favorite part is the anime religious girls. They have the power of God and anime on their side. In case you don't know, you can watch YouTube Shorts as regular videos with all the regular video settings. Here's how. Change the Shorts into watch question V equals. My mnemonic to get the order right. I want to watch this. Watch what? A video. This one. I know my mnemonic device is kinda shitty, but it helps me. I just think everyone ought to know this. Yes, for everyone who asks how they can favorite my videos, this is how you do it. You can turn the short into a proper video. You're welcome! 5 minutes after invention of wheel. Bro, literally though, bro, the whole world is a wheel, turning round and round, an endless cycle of seasons and lives and realms. It all keeps turning, and it all keeps coming back around. 5 minutes after invention of books. Bro, literally though, bro, the whole world is a book. God is the author of being, and he writes our names in the book of life. In the beginning was the Word, bro. You see, bro? 5 minutes after invention of complex gears. Bro, literally though, bro, the whole world is mechanical. God is the divine watchmaker, and the planets spin along predetermined paths according to the turning of cosmic gears. It's all just predictable mechanical paths from creation to here. 5 minutes after invention of computers. Bro, I think I just figured something out. Bro, the world can be all of these things, and more. What if Tumblr users suddenly loses their mouse? J, next post. K, previous post. L, like. N, view notes. Space, show photo. Shift R, reblog. Shift E, add to queue. Z tab, switch blogs. Witchcraft. This changes everything. I just reblogged this with a command. Shit. Do you know how much this helps people who have trouble with the mouse? Me, other disabled people? Thank you. Yep, I use these when my hands get particularly weak, like now. Alt-R is the new command to reblog. Alt-Q is the new command to queue. This is all for you guys out there. Hope you use them. Virgin plastic bottle. Crumples like a bitch. Stays in the ocean for thousands of years. Makes annoying crinkling sound. Is only recyclable a few times. Becomes useless when broken. Chad glass bottle. Is sturdy. Only stays in the ocean for like 50 years. Makes cool whistling sound. Is infinitely recyclable. Becomes epic weapon when broken. Is also musical instrument. Better than recyclable. If the right systems are in place, a glass bottle can be sterilized and reused, which uses less resources than recycling. We seem to have forgotten the old sustainability slogan I was taught as a kid in the 90s, which is reduce, reuse, recycle. And that's the preferential order. We should be reducing first, then reusing what we can, and recycling should be a distant third option. But capitalism can only make money from the recycling part. My mom says, never put anything in an email that you wouldn't want on the front page of the newspaper. Age-old advice which is more relevant nowadays rather than less. This is the second iteration of it though. The original version is, never write anything in a letter you wouldn't want to see in print. Advice handed down by my mother from her forebears. From the IT department, we archive everything. And Outlook autosaves every couple seconds. My advice to kids on the internet is don't get too attached to your username, and absolutely do not blend your offline life with your online presence. You do not want your future self to have any connection to the stuff you are saying and doing right now. You don't have the privilege of every embarrassing thing you said being lost to a defunct BB code forum like my generation did. Please, please leave yourself the opportunity for a clean slate. You'll thank yourself later. By the way, this post is just as much about online safety and protecting yourself from stalkers and employers as it is being able to distance yourself from kin drama and ship wars when you realize the absurdity of it all. I really like how many of the world's most iconic structures and places are just right next to some of the most mundane stuff imaginable. For example, Stonehenge is right next to a busy road. The pyramids of Giza are at the outskirts of Cairo. Niagara Falls are part of the town of the same name. And Agrippa's Pantheon is crammed inside downtown Rome. It's just so interesting to notice. History fucked me up. Oxford was built and operational as a college before the rise of the Mayans, and Cleopatra lived in a time nearer to Pizza Hut's invention than to the pyramids being built. I need a non-comprehensive history book that covers known world history in time periods. Like, in this century, all this shit was happening concurrently, and not just all spread out, so I have to piece it together like some unpaid, uneducated scholar. Mongols were fighting samurai in Japan, and knights in Europe at the same time. Star Wars: A New Hope came out the same year as the last execution in France by guillotine. Abraham Lincoln and Edgar Allan Poe were friends in their early 20s. When the Great Pyramids were being built, there were areas that still had woolly mammoths roaming. What? Harvard University didn't teach calculus in its first few years after being established because calculus wasn't invented yet. Nintendo was founded 2 years after the Eiffel Tower was constructed. This is the book you want, the timetables of history, going year by year, or in the earlier sections at least century by century, and showing you what was going on in various parts of the world in several categories, e.g. politics, literature, science, etc. Super useful for visualizing what events were happening at the same time. Not to oversimplify an extremely complex discipline, but if I had to pick one tip to give people on how to have more productive interactions with children, especially in an instructive sense, it's that teaching a kid well is a lot more like improv than it is like error correction, and you should always work on minimizing the amount of no, wrong, and maximizing the amount of yes, and. For example, we have a species of fish at the aquarium that looks a lot like a tiny pufferfish. Children are constantly either asking us if that's what they are, or confidently telling us that's what they are. If you rush to correct them, you risk completely severing their interest in the situation, because 1, kids don't like to engage with adults who make them feel bad, and 2, they were excited because pufferfish are interesting, and you have not given them any reason to be invested in non-pufferfish. Instead, if you say something like, "It looks a lot like a tiny pufferfish," you're right, but these guys are even funnier. Want to know what they're called? You have primed them perfectly for the delightful truth of the Pacific spiny lumpsucker. I was in martial arts for years, and in particular, I kinda specialized in working with the younger kids. The 2 big rules when instructing younger students was, compliment before critique, don't say but, say now. Praise kids on what they get right first, especially if they are struggling. Like OP said, kids don't like to engage with people who make them feel bad. They need encouragement when learning new things. Number 2 boils down to this. If you tell a kid a compliment, then say, "But you need to fix this," that "but" completely negates your compliment. It's gone. It was cancelled out like adding a negative to a positive. Using, "Hey, that punch is looking great. Now let's focus on your stance," doesn't verbally cancel out the progress they've made. It's like they've checked off something on their list of stuff to work on. Wording can absolutely make or break a child's motivation and interest. When I was very young, my mother told me, "They're going to try and teach you that we came from monkeys, but that's not true, and you shouldn't listen to them because we were made from God." And she was my mom, and I was like 7, so I pretty much just went, "Okay, noted, anyway." Anyway, like 2 years later, evolution comes up in class, and one of my classmates goes, "Is this the 'we evolved from monkeys' thing?" And I'm on red alert. "This is what my mom told me about." The teacher replies, "Well, we share a common ancestor, but we didn't evolve directly from apes. If you go back way before apes or people existed, you'll find a different third thing we both came from. We know this because of things like fossils." And I was like, "Oof, dodged a bullet there. Good thing my 4th grade science class isn't trying to teach us we came from monkeys, and instead figured stuff out using fossils and taught us that instead. Instructions unclear. Ended up believing in evolution anyway." Did you know? Ninjas don't wear black. They used to disguise themselves as civilians. Unlike ninjas in movies, the real guys were smart enough to know that wearing a black outfit with a face mask wasn't the best strategy for blending in. But this leaves out the really neat part. The reason we equate the above image with a ninja comes from kabuki theater. Within kabuki theater, there's a convention of having kuroku, stagehands, dress in all black with a full face covering, and move around among the costumed actors in full view, moving scenery, props, and costumes. In a similar way, bunraku puppeteers dress in all black, and only the lead puppeteer's face would be uncovered. The audience knew to ignore these people and focus on the actors, and to only see that the scene was magically changing. So when a play called for a ninja assassin to jump out of nowhere and kill someone, the easiest way to create the surprise reveal was to disguise the ninja in the all-black garb of the kuroku and to remove the face covering and start acting at the last second. This would shock the audience, who were conditioned to not focus on them. Pretty cool, yeah? What the fuck? I thought stage ninja was just a cute theater term for crew! There were literally goddamn stage ninjas! As a former stage ninja, I can confirm this is both a thing and awesome. Welcome to Japan, where cars are parked orderly and in reverse, where fruits can be cubes, where people keep left, and lamps have different brightness for double beds. People queue up in lines. Applies to stickers, too. Where are you from? Please help us to do the survey. Just look at Japan, they're all in lines. Where what you get is the same as the poster. You get waved goodbye? Aww. Smooth train operator. No embarrassing knocking or barging into rooms to check out if they are occupied. When you need an extra hand. For the selfiestas. Brawly holders. Because normal manhole covers are too mainstream. Think diagonal. And anytime you need to soak your feet. Where you raise responsible adults, not brats. And luggage is organized in color codes. Instant sanitary gratification. Where water is that clean in the drains. Look at that, you've got fish swimming in it. Nuff said. Notice, keep your smartphone clean. Wipe with this paper. When anyone says it's not possible to keep big cities clean, I'm just show them this. Japan is one of the most densely populated countries. Don't gimme that BS. Spending time with kids always reminds me how much I love the way they play. I'll be like, hey kid, look, this little bug is called an isopod. It's related to crabs and it eats dead plants. And they'll immediately respond with something like, cool, let's play isopods. We have to collect dead leaves as fast as we can, and if we don't get enough, we die of starvation and have a bug funeral. What an amazing way to process new information or explore an idea. It's important to remember these kinds of games are not random or pointless. Playing is how kids learn. It is how we as humans learn. I am studying gamification, and the science of the play and the game is really insane. Want to start having better and healthier lifestyle? Create games. Like lifestyle apps are created to look like phone games. Want to do work around the house? Create game. Want to learn how to socialize? Play game. D&D is a wonderful game for people who struggle with socialization. Life is supposed to be fun. Create game, play game, have fun. It is how our brain wants to learn and work. I just saw someone say the words jokingly gaslight. This might be a good time to reintroduce the internet to the terms lying, or perhaps pranking, or even just joking on its own. Okay, say it with me guys. If you are giving someone wrong information in the hopes that they'll believe that it's true, then that's lying. If you are giving someone wrong information under the assumption that they'll ultimately realize that it's false and that they will find this funny, then that's joking. If you are giving someone wrong information in the hopes that they'll believe that it's true and that their response will be funny, then that's a prank. If you are giving someone wrong information in the hopes that they will notice the differences between your presentation of reality and their perception of it, and come to doubt their ability to judge what is and is not real, then that's gaslighting. And if everyone is in on the lie, it's Goncharov. Now don't leave this in the tags. If you are giving someone wrong information and you assume they will know it is wrong in hopes that they will play along, then that's a bit. If the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, then that's amore. Sometimes I entertain myself by mentally categorizing tiers of headcanon. It has nothing to do with quality. Just, wait, this is headcanon? The source material doesn't explicitly say that the headcanon is true, but it really strongly implies it, to the point that a lot of people don't even realize it's not explicit canon. I'm not talking ships so much as just really obvious details that aren't quite spelled out. Interpretive headcanon. The headcanon is based on something in the source material, and it's a valid interpretation, but there are a lot of ways to interpret the thing in the source, and it could easily and justifiably be read quite differently. This is also often mistaken for explicit canon, borderline headcanon. The headcanon is spun off from something in the source material and doesn't contradict anything in it, but the basis is ephemeral enough that it's mostly something you, someone else, the fandom made up and ran with. Classic headcanon. The headcanon is not directly based on canon details. It's made up to fill those fun blank spaces in canons, and to connect things we do know. So it works with what's established in canon and can lead to really fun and interesting spins on canon, but it definitely leans more towards invention. This headcanon has creaky floorboards. The headcanon is not only stuff you, I, fandom made up to go with canon details, it can actually be fairly difficult to reconcile with those details. It's technically possible to make them fit if you squint and interpret it in some specific and improbable ways, but it's an obvious stretch. This sounds negative, but sometimes canon details suck. Headcanon? Creaky? Lol. This headcanon definitely cannot be reconciled to its source material and does not wish to be. It gives no fucks about canon except insofar as these headcanons often go out of their way to defy the canon details of the source and blast holes straight through its structure. I will admit to not anticipating how many people would be into headcanon taxonomy. For those of you who do not know, this is a trumpet. This is a trombone. This is a tuba. And this is a French horn. Thank you for your time. You mean trumpet, slidey trumpet, big-ass trumpet, drunk trumpet. I'm gonna punch you. My sides. At least your instruments look different. Those are some fancy guitars. Excuse you, that is a bass, a violin, a fiddle, and a viola. Those are Big Mama Violin and her little violings. String trumpets. That's not a bass, you dick, that's a cello! Get your fucking string instruments right, JFC! Things heating up in the orchestra fandom. I know what a trumpet is. I play one. Time to reblog this and give my friends a stroke. Being a past trumpet player and now a French horn, this post makes me very angry. I tap keys. But hey, what about baby grand, grand, square grand, spinet, upright, organ, player? Wow, those are really strange trumpets. Where did you get them from? What about this 6-string viola I found? Acoustic trumpet. I'm gonna punch you. Violins is never the solution. My favorite instrument is this weird fiddle. Oh look, it's gotten worse since I last seen it. Those are all some pretty weird saxophones. Is mayonnaise an instrument? This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. OMG. This is insufferable. I love it. I feel like as a band kid and a piano player, this should piss me off more, but to be honest, I think it's beautiful. Y'all forgot the almighty footer. Skinny trumpet. Weird-ass piano. Indeed, a weird-ass piano. There is a special place in Super Hell for the person who invented "the customer is always right." Remember that the full quote from Harry Selfridge is, "The customer is always right in matters of taste," which means that if they want to buy an ugly hat, let them. They're still buying it. Like a lot of sayings, it's been cut in half to cater to the absolute worst kind of people. Some other bangers: jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Blood is thicker than water? Nuh-uh-uh. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the waters of the womb. Money is the root of all evil? No. The love of money is the root of all evil. There's also pull yourself up by the bootstraps, which conservatives are oh so fond of saying. Bootstraps are, well, straps on your boots. You cannot physically pull yourself up by them, and that's what the original phrase meant. Pulling oneself up by the bootstraps is meant to be an impossible task. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness. The second part really matters. I'm so sick of people saying water doesn't taste. Water fucking tastes! Well, what does it taste like then? Nothing. You know, the place where I last worked wanted to use our reading room as backdrop for a filmed interview. We had a very pretty reading room. On the day the film crew was there, the audio guy came over to my desk, which was at the edge of the space, and said, "Look, you can keep working because you're not doing anything too loud, but in a minute I'm going to go over there and call for silence for 10 to 20 seconds, and during that time I need you to not make any noise." And I went, "Lol, sure." But he clearly felt a little uncomfortable telling me to not move at my own desk, so he explained, "The purpose of those 20 seconds is to record the silence in the room. It's so they have a patch they can edit silence over some extraneous background noise later. The phone ringing, me getting an email, the toilet flushing in the bathroom next door, the elevator coming and going, noisy student group, etc. But the point was that they can't just slap any old silence over a recording done in a certain room. They have to use the silence from that room, or it will be jarring on a subliminal level to the people listening, because silence has a sound, and it's a little different everywhere you hear it. That's what water tastes like." Repost. Roman stylus 70 AD in common vernacular translates into, "I went into the city and all I bought you was this lousy pen." Link in full translation in the comments. Fucking screaming, shitty souvenirs haven't changed a bit in almost 2,000 years! From Planet Knowledge. The inscription has been painstakingly examined and translated by classicist and epigrapher Dr. Roger Tomlin. It reads, I'm not gonna read all of this Latin, because I don't know how you pronounce it, but here's the translation. "I have come from the city. I bring you a welcome gift with a sharp point that you may remember me. I ask, if fortune allowed, that I might be able to give as generously as the way is long, and as my purse is empty." In other words, the stylus is a gift to remind the recipient of its sender. The sender acknowledges that it is a cheap gift and wishes that they could have given more. Its tongue-in-cheek sentiment is reminiscent of the kinds of novelty souvenirs we still give today. It is the Roman equivalent of, I went to Rome and all I got you was this pen, providing a touching personal insight into the humor of someone who lived nearly 2,000 years ago. Humans be buying shitty souvenirs for their friends. The city was either Rome or Londinium, both of which are places that will still happily sell you cheap touristy stuff today. History. It was kind of interesting to me that out of all the people in our training group, the ones that were the quickest to form social bonds were the people from way out in the country, and the city people just kind of quietly kept to themselves. But I was definitely accepted as one of the bumpkins. Oh, this is actually an example of rural versus urban manners. In rural or less densely populated areas, the polite thing is to offer people your time and social energy, which is why country people will talk your ear off at the slightest acquaintance. It's kind of lonely when you have to make an effort to see people, so you make an effort. In urban or densely populated areas, you're meeting people whether you want to or not, because you are physically close to each other constantly. So the polite thing there is to kind of ignore other people and keep strictly to business, so you're not imposing upon their, probably already drained, social spoons. The city folks will warm right up to you once they get to know you well enough to know that talking to you won't piss you off. I grew up rural and live in the SF Bay Area now, and this is exactly how it is. Appropriate city behavior is about efficiency, creating the least friction possible in every interaction, because everyone has somewhere to be and is trying to pretend they don't have strangers in their personal bubble all day long. In SF, chatting with the bank teller a second longer than necessary is rude AF, because there are 10 people in line and the teller is running behind, and you are inconveniencing everyone. They will deal with 1,000 customers today and they genuinely don't have it in them to form a friendly relationship with you. In the little forest where I grew up, you could stop your car in the middle of a one-lane street to chat up a friend on the sidewalk. Any other cars would just go around you. There wasn't much traffic. It was fine. If you're one of 50 people the bank teller's gonna see today and there's no line, it's actually nice to ask how their day has been and commiserate about the road work at the single downtown traffic light. City and country folks are operating under very different pressures and both are right, but it can be hard for city people to remember how to just shoot the shit with strangers. r/no stupid questions. Why do my students call me a goat? I am a math teacher for 8th graders at the school I teach at. Throughout this whole past school year, there was this running joke where the students would call me the goat, and I would respond back each time that they are the goats, and they would all laugh. It was pretty funny to be honest, and I never gave it much thought, but I realized that I have been partaking in a joke that I never actually got. I had a good connection with them, and they are all really good kids, so I don't really think they were making fun of me. Can someone, maybe an 8th grader, explain this joke to me? And how would you respond if someone calls you a goat? GOAT stands for greatest of all time. It's a compliment. Sounds like you're a great teacher and they enjoy your classes, which is saying something since math is most people's least favorite subject. Oh, wow. Yes, that is the reason I became a math teacher. I always hated math growing up, but then I realized at some point it's just taught terribly. In my classes, for example, there is no such thing as a useless math lesson. I always remind them how useful it is to know this stuff, from anything regarding money to detecting patterns in life, to even have a strong basis for any career they choose. Some of them are looking forward to solving the Millennium Prize problems, which I really hope with all my heart will happen. I've been teaching for 17 years, and they are by far my favorite set of students so far. I put my heart and soul into teaching. This is amazing to hear. Thank you. Edit. OMG, I am in tears. I can't believe they were complimenting me this whole time. Thank you all for answering this question. You can do it. You can't do it. Don't give up. Give up. You will prevail. You have all the necessary skills to pull this off. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Let yourself rest. The only way to learn is by failing. You will get the hang of it, but for now, just push through. Know your limits. Not everything is your burden to bear. Walk out. My trick for getting through grad school is learning to navigate the quadrants with all their nuances. People really underestimate the importance of mastering that bottom right. Quitting things is a skill. It can improve your life and open up new opportunities. Add it to your arsenal today. And knowing the difference between the bottom two is super important. Bottom left is, I'm going to do this badly now so I can do it better later. It's good for things where practice helps you improve. You might not have done a good job this time, but you get learning and experience out of it. You figured out how to do stuff better. You're improving your skills. Bottom right is about knowing when something's a lost cause. You're doing a bad job and you're not going to get anything out of it. Just let it go. As someone around for 9/11 and the never forget #1 greatest tragedy ever in history response to it, I am enthralled and invigorated by the fact that younger people just make amogus memes and TikTok nonsense about it. A huge chunk of America cared more about it than any entire genocide and thought you would cry learning about it. They hoped it'd make every generation patriotically angry forever and ever and want to join the military. Instead, you Photoshop the towers into Squidward's house and shit. Never stop, lol. I'm physically unable to take 9/11 seriously entirely because my grade 9 English teacher was bizarrely obsessed with it. We basically had an entire unit on 9/11. We watched that documentary from those students that were doing a documentary of firefighters and wound up getting the only footage of the first plane hitting. We did a novel study of a book about some kid being in one of the towers for Take Your Kid to Work Day and him and his dad squeezing past the wreckage of the plane to escape in time. We watched that Nick Cage movie of him being a firefighter during 9/11 that gets stuck in an elevator shaft when the plane collapses. I am dead fucking serious. We had to make up fictional people that died in the attack, write an obituary for our 9/11 sonas, and then write and deliver a eulogy as their grief-stricken parent. At one point in the unit, the teacher clarified that she hadn't personally lost anyone to the attack, nor was she anywhere near New York when it happened. She never bothered to ask if any of us had actually lost someone in the attack, which kind of seems like a thing you should do before making us invent fictional victims to give eulogies for. The unit began with her demanding to know where we all were on the day of the attack and what we remembered. And she started crying when we told her that 1, we were 2 years old at the time and couldn't remember shit fuck. The closest thing was one of the older kids kind of thought they remembered being very confused at adults freaking out over the TV, but that could have been literally anything, and so this meant that 2, we were the last class she would ever teach that could possibly remember 9/11. Probably didn't help that someone pointed out that we were the class born in 1999, so in 2 years, she'd have students that hadn't even been born during 9/11. That may have contributed to the teacher crying over the whole thing. We're Canadian. That last sentence killed me. Jesus fuck! Satanism represents kindness to those who deserve it, instead of love wasted on ingrates. You cannot love everyone. It is ridiculous to think you can. If you love everyone and everything, you lose your natural powers of selection and wind up being a pretty poor judge of character and quality. If anything is used too freely, it loses its true meaning. Therefore, the Satanist believes you should love strongly and completely those who deserve your love, but never turn the other cheek to your enemy. The more I learn about Satanism, the less horrendous it seems. Not even kidding. That's because non-theistic Satanism is more about worshipping yourself and sort of treating others how you want to be treated, etc. Hail Satan! Satanism is actually really solid, like the 5th satanic rule of the earth says not to make sexual advances unless you are given consent. Satan seems like a pretty nice guy. This week on I Didn't Know I Was a Satanist, wait till you hear the 9 satanic sins. 1. Stupidity. 2. Pretentiousness. 3. Solipsism. 4. Self-deceit. 5. Herd conformity. 6. Lack of perspective. 7. Forgetfulness of past orthodoxies. 8. Counterproductive pride. 9. Lack of aesthetics. That's right, if you ain't got no style, you be sinning. Converts to Satanism. It mentioned a rule above, but I haven't seen the rest of the satanic rules posted here, so 1. Do not give opinions or advice unless you were asked. 2. Do not tell your troubles to others unless you are sure they want to hear them. 3. When in another's home, show them respect or else do not go there. 4. If a guest in your home annoys you, treat them cruelly and without mercy. 5. Do not make sexual advantages unless you are given the mating signal. 6. Do not take which does not belong to you, unless it is a burden to the other person and they cry out to be relieved. 7. Acknowledge the power of magic if you have employed it to successfully obtain your desires. If you deny the power of magic after having called upon it with success, you will lose all you have obtained. 8. Do not complain about anything to which you need not subject yourself. 9. Do not harm young children. 10. Do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked or for your food. 11. When walking in open territory, bother no one. If someone bothers you, ask them to stop. If they do not stop, destroy them. Today in Shit, Let's Be Satan. I'm a Catholic Christian, but this made more sense than some of the stuff in the Bible does. I don't usually post things like this on my blog, but I thought it'd be important for people to know that Satanists do not worship Satan. Satan is the Latin root for the one whom opposes. The name was purposely chosen to piss off Christians. Satanists are opposed to everything religious, which means they do not believe in God, therefore they do not believe in Satan either. The misconceptions of Satanism comes from the movies where you see people sacrificing goats and all that stuff, but it is not true. I have read the Satanic Bible. I can assure you that they do not believe in anything religious. Throwing this back up here because I'm thinking about leading with it at the family reunion. Wow, it's kinda like perking your head outside a window they always told you would be dangerous, and instead, you find only another view. Interesting. Kids today, you mean the save button represents some kind of physical storage disk? OMG. Me today. You mean uppercase and lowercase refer to the physical cases where printers kept their letters? OMG! Uppercase, lowercase. Pair of printers' cases. It has French roots. Case means box in Old French. Upper boxes, lower boxes. Basse de case, haute de case. Now I only need to understand where the words type and font come from, and I'm done. Font has a common root with found, as in foundry. Type cast from molten metal. Having seen them in action, linotype machines are among my favorite bits of machinery. A giant typewriter with a furnace and a crucible of molten lead at the back. There's a romance here. Font designers are still called foundries. Jaw drops. Also, leading isn't the amount of space that leads the type. It is the size of the lead, metal strips, used to create said space. Point sizes are seemingly random between typefaces because they refer to the piece of lead the type was on which you can no longer see. There are 72 points in an inch, and the point size refers to the total height of the character set. Wow, I never realized this! I love type history! Also, in a printing press, putting a bunch of common words or phrases together is accomplished by mounting them in a single plate of text called a stereotype, and the sound it makes when it's pressed to the page is cliché. Swear to God! Today I learned. Click to go to the thread, which probably has more interesting tidbits I missed. Bonus! And the shift key used to physically shift the entire type bar upwards on typewriters. When people used to cut and paste text, it was with scissors and paste glue. We are full of skeuomorphism. Your mind is going to be blown when you find out that return comes from carriage return, when the entire bit of the typewriter holding the paper returned to its original position. I remember those days, and the little ringing noise as it did so. These are my people. Betting I've reblogged this before, betting I'll reblog it when it turns up again. In addition to the print terminology stuff, the visual shorthand icons and ad graphics for something about writing are still often pen nibs, fountain pens, and typewriters, while graphics of a monitor, keyboard, and mouse remain visual shorthand for computing, even though most writers now use monitor, keyboard, mouse, or even laptop touchpad. In addition, headers for "this blog/website is about writing" are often in one of the many imitation typewriter fonts complete with smudges, or just Courier. The start and end call icons on most or all smartphones is still the handset of a classic desk telephone, and sometimes the open app icon is a complete phone. The term hang up for end the call refers to something even older. One of these. And of course, the save icon is indeed a 3.5-inch floppy disk. Why it wasn't a 5 1/4 floppy is a mystery. The icon version is just as distinctive. Also, why various OP updates never changed save to the graphic of a CD or DVD or flash drive is another mystery, and nowadays a save icon should probably be a cartoon cloud. Graphics and terminology are funny things. Reblogging this again for even more information! I'm mostly entertained by the guy who thinks you need to know that case means box in French, as though that's not what it means in English. Skeuomorphism, my beloved. It's kinda scary how your whole life depends on how well you do as a teenager. Oh my god, no it doesn't. Don't put this kind of pressure on people. You can absolutely fuck up in your teen years and continue on to a good life just fine. You can drop out of school, get a GED, still go to college, and finish your degree as late as you want. I know people in my school who still haven't graduated, and they're 26, some older. You can always transfer someplace else. Always build yourself up from the ground. After a certain amount of college credits, a lot of schools really don't care about your high school GED or your SAT scores anymore. If you fuck up in your teenage years, you are not a failure. You can always reinvent yourself. Always start over. There is always a second chance. Reblogging this for my followers freaking out over art school or college. I dropped out of high school and never thought I'd get into college as easily as I did. You will be fine. Fun story my biology professor just told us. When he was 23, he was married to his wife and worked 2 jobs to support them since she was in college. Gas station attendant and construction worker. He worked these 2 jobs because that was the only work he could get since he was at the reading level of a 3rd grader. One night he was writing something and his wife noticed he was writing from right to left. Since she was studying occupational therapy, she realized he had a learning disability and started working with him. He slowly began to learn to read and at 26 got his GED and went to college. His first year of college, he took the lowest level math course he could take, 001. Over the years, he worked on learning what he needed to, ended up graduating with a biology degree. He then went on to get his master's and PhD, graduating at the top of his class. He is now an extremely accomplished biologist and professor. So don't let anyone tell you that your future is based on your choices as a teenager. Seriously, do not believe this. You aren't even stuck with your choices you make in your 20s. I didn't start working in my current field until just after my 30th birthday. It has nothing to do with what I went to school for in my 20s. My husband has a political science degree, and he's a sports journalist. You are not tied to anything. Go be. My day job did not exist when I was a teenager, and the idea of trying to be an author was a distant thing on my radar. I thought I was going to be an English teacher, and then I thought I was going to be a music teacher, and then I thought I was going to be a drama teacher. Also in there, therapist, early childhood educator, then finally, web developer, because by then it was an actual thing that existed. I didn't actually figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up until about 8 years ago, when I was 36. I tried pursuing writing when I was 30, stopped, and then started pursuing it seriously again when I was 40. There is always time to change, and don't let anyone tell you that high school is the best time of your life either, because that's bullshit too. I was a high school dropout and didn't go to college until I was within a month of my 40th birthday. While there, I changed my major twice. Then I taught art long enough to earn retirement. Before college, I've worked in dog kennels, as a cashier, a dental assistant, a vet assistant, electronics assembly, a machinist in the military, picking up trash in a state park, and as locksmith at a university. After teaching, I worked night shift as a security guard. Life is a freaking adventure, not a locked grid you must move from one square to another. Take a chance. If you fail, get back up, dust yourself off, and try something new. Your life is not over at 25. You can continue to learn and engage with hobbies and change your life path and meet new people. Get rid of this idea that what you decide to do at 18 is going to be what you do for life. As someone who freaks out at times about this kind of thing in my final year of university, this really helped. So let's talk about the lost generation. This is the generation that came of age during World War I and the 1918 flu pandemic. They witnessed their world collapse in the first war that spread around the globe, and they, in retrospect optimistically, called it the war to end all wars. And that war was a quagmire. The trenches on the Western Front were notoriously awful, unsanitary, and cold and wet, and teeming with sickness, and bloody battles were fought to gain or lose a few feet of territory, And all because a series of alliances caused one assassination in one unstable area to spiral into a brutal large-scale war, fought on the ground by people who mostly had no personal stake in the outcomes and gained nothing from winning. On some of the worst-hit battlefields, the land is still too toxic for plant growth, and on the heels of this horrific war, a pandemic struck. It's often referred to as the Spanish flu because Spain was neutral in the war, and so was the first country to admit that their people were dropping like flies. By the time the warring countries were willing to face the disease, it was far too late to contain it. Anywhere from 50 to 100 million people worldwide would die from it. 675,000 were in the US. But once it was finally contained, anywhere from a year to a year and a half later, the 20s had begun, and they began roaring. Hedonism abounded. Alcohol flowed like water in spite of prohibition. Music and dance and art flourished. It was the age of Dadaism, an artistic movement of surrealism, absurdism, and abstraction. Women's skirts rose and haircuts shortened in a flamboyant rejection of the social norms of the previous decades. It was a time of glitter and glamour and jazz and flash, and, save for the art that was made, it was mostly skin deep. Everyone stumbled out of the war and pandemic, desperate to forget the horrific things they'd seen and done, and all that they'd lost, and lost for nothing. Reality seemed so pointless. It's not a coincidence that the two codifiers of the fantasy genre, J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, both fought in World War I. In fact, they were school friends before the war, and were the only two of their group to return home. Tolkien wanted to rewrite the history of Europe, while Lewis wanted to rebuild faith in the escape from the world. There's a reason Frodo goes into the West. Physically, he returned to the Shire, but mentally he never came back from Mordor, and he couldn't live his whole life there. There's a reason 3 of the Pevensies can never let go of Narnia. In Narnia, unlike reality, the things they did and fought for and believed in actually mattered, were actually worth the price they paid. It's also no coincidence that many of the famous artists of the time either killed themselves outright or let their vices do them in. The 20s roared both in spite of and because of the despair of the lost generation. It was also the era of the Harlem Renaissance, which came to the feelings of alienation and disillusionment from a different direction. There was a large migration of black people from the South, many of whom moved to the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. Obviously, the sense of alienation wasn't new to black people in America, but the cultural shift allowed for them to publicly express it in the arts and literature in ways that hadn't been open to them before. There was also horrific and state-sanctioned violence perpetrated against black communities in this time, furthering the anger and despair and sense that society had not only failed them, but had never even given them a chance. The term at the time was shell shock, but now we know it as PTSD, and the vast majority of the people who came of age between 1910 and 1920 suffered from it, from one source or another. It was an entire generation of trauma, and then the stock market crashed in 1929. Helpless, angry, impotent in the face of all that had seemingly destroyed the world for them, on the verge of utter despair, it was also a generation vulnerable to despotism. In the wake of all this chaos, God, please, someone just take control of all this mess and set it right. Sometimes the person who took over was decent and played by the rules, and at least attempted to do the right thing. Other times they were self-serving and hateful, and committed to subjugating anyone who didn't fit their mold. There are a lot of parallels to now, but we have something they didn't, and that's the fact that they did it first. We know what their mistakes and sins were. We have the gift of history to see the whole picture, and what worked and what failed. We as a species have walked this road before, and we weren't any happier or stronger or smarter about it the first time. I think I want to reiterate that point. The lost generation were no stronger or weaker than millennials and Gen Z are today. Plenty of both have risen up and fought back, and plenty have stumbled and been crushed under the weight. Plenty have been horribly abused by the people who were supposed to lead them, and plenty have done the abusing. Plenty of great art has been made by both, and plenty of it is escapist fantasy or scathing criticism, or inspiring optimism or despairing pessimism. We find humor in much the same things, because when reality is a mess, both the absurd and the self-deprecating become hilarious in comparison. There's a reason modern audiences don't find Seinfeld as funny as Gen X does, and many older audiences find modern comedy impenetrable and baffling. They're different kinds of humor from different realities.
I think my point accumulates into this. In spite of how awful and hopeless and pointless everything feels, we do have a guide. We've been through this before, as a culture, and even though all of them are gone now, we have their words and art and memory to help us. We know now what they didn't then. There is a future. The path forward is a hard one, and the only thing that makes it easier is human connection. Art, in the most base sense, anything that is an expression of emotion and thought into a medium that allows it to be shared, is the best and most enduring vehicle for that connection, to reach not just loved ones, but people 1,000 miles or 100 years away. So don't bottle it up. Don't pretend to be okay when you're not. Paint it, sculpt it, write it, play it, sing it, scream it. Hell, you can even meme it out into the void. Whatever it takes to reach someone else, not just for yourself, but for others, both present and future. Because, to quote the inimitable Terry Pratchett, in 100 years we'll all be dead, but here and now, we are alive. There is a future. We are responsible for getting each other there. Please keep sharing and connecting. This is scholarship that resonates every 100 years.
Humans are weird, so there has been a bit of, what if humans were the weird ones, going around Tumblr at the moment, and Earth Day got me thinking. Earth is a wonky place. The axis tilts, the orbit wobbles, and the ground spews molten rock for goodness sakes. What if what makes humans weird is just our capacity to survive? What if all the other life-bearing planets are these mild, Mediterranean climates with no seasons, no tectonic plates, and no intense weather? What if several species, including humans, land on a world and the humans are all, "Score! Earth-like world! Let's get exploring before we get outcompeted!" And the planet starts offing the other aliens right and left, electric storms, hypothermia, tornadoes, and the humans are just there, counting seconds between flashes, having snowball fights, and just surviving. To paraphrase one of my favorite bits of a humans are awesome fiction megapost, you don't know you're from a death world until you leave it. For a ton of reasons, I really like the idea of Earth being Space Australia. Earth being Space Australia. Words cannot express how much I love these posts.
I'm sorry, what did you just say your comfortable temperature range is?
Honestly, we can tolerate anywhere from -40 to 50 Celsius, but we prefer the 0 to 30 range.
I'm sorry, did you just list temperatures below freezing?
Yeah, but most of us prefer to throw on scarves or jackets at those temperatures. It can be a bit nippy. Nah, mate, I knew this guy in college who refused to wear anything past his knees and elbows until it was -20 at least. Yeah, everybody knows someone like that.
Did you also say 50 Celsius? As in halfway to boiling?
Ugh, yes, it sucks. We sweat everywhere, and God help you if you touch a seatbelt buckle. But yes.
We've got like 50 uninhabitable planets we think you might enjoy. You're telling me that you have settlements on islands with active volcanism?
Well, yeah, I'm not about to tell Iceland and Hawaii how to live their lives. Actually, it's kind of a tourist attraction.
What, the molten rock?
Well, yeah, it's not every day you see a mountain spew out liquid rocks. The best one is Yellowstone, though. All these hot springs and geysers from the supervolcano.
You actively seek out active supervolcanoes?
Shit, man, we swim in the groundwater near them. Sounds like the Damned trilogy by Alan Dean Foster.
And you say the poles of your world would get as low as -100 with wind chill?
Yup, with blizzards you can't see through every other day just about.
Amazing! When did you manage to send drones that could survive such temperatures?
Well, actually...
What?
We kinda sent people?
What?
We sent...
No, yeah, I heard you, What? You sent humans to a place 100 degrees below freezing?
Yeah?
And they didn't die?
Well, the first few did.
People died of the cold and your solution was to send more people?
My new favorite humans are weird quote.
People died of the cold and your solution was to send more people?
AKA the history of Russia. AKA Arctic exploration. AKA the history of Alaska.
But surely you have records of volcanic activity doing tremendous damage to human settlements.
Yep, Pompeii is legendary. Entire cities went. Towns buried under lava, people's brains boiled in the first rush of heat, loads more killed by falling pumice.
Ah, good. They learned their lesson and didn't build there again.
Well...
Are you seriously telling me this volcano is legendary for killing several urban conurbations and you built on top of it again?
In our defense, this hasn't actually done it since.
What about earthquake-prone areas? Tell me you're at least vaguely sensible about those.
Oh yeah, after the first major earthquake that flattens a city, we build them better.
So you're saying that the air in these places can kill you, physically, not chemically. It just moves, how did you phrase it, stupid fast?
Yeah, pretty much. It can pick up livestock, dismantle structures. It's bad news.
That seems frustrating, to have such wide swaths of otherwise habitable land rendered unlivable.
What are you talking about, unlivable? Nothing a storm cellar can't fix.
Storm cellar? A room dug slightly below ground level?
With a door. Yep.
Your atmosphere can, without warning, violently pick you up and fling you and your buildings, and your response was to dig holes.
We put up sirens, too.
To warn the other humans to get into their holes. Very prudent.
Object personification in autism. This paper will be very sad if you don't read it. We used to have a microwave I called Michaelwave, and my brother had a party and someone punched through Michael and I sobbed till I was sick. Aww. This is a legitimate problem in robotics. Like, if you're a bomb disposal guy and your team has a cool bomb disposal robot which you've given a cutesy name to, you may hesitate to put that robot in harm's way, which is not optimal in the bomb disposing field. It also doesn't help if you hold funerals for the robots after they get exploded. This happens pretty regularly. Anyway, nobody has worked out how to stop humans from pack bonding with literally inanimate objects, and they probably never will. Like, even knowing it's a problem, I still think those EOD robots deserve funerals. In 2007, the US military rejected a multi-limbed anti-mine robot because its demise was too inhumane. The most effective way to find and destroy a landmine is to step on it. This has bad results, of course, if you're a human, but not so much if you're a robot and have as many legs as a centipede sticking out from your body. That's why Mark Tilden, a robotics physicist at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, built something like that. At the Yuma Test Grounds in Arizona, the autonomous robot, 5 feet long and modeled on a stick insect, strutted out for a live fire test and worked beautifully, he says. Every time it found a mine, blew it up and lost a limb, it picked itself up and readjusted to move forward on its remaining legs, continuing to clear a path through the minefield. Finally, it was down to one leg. Still, it pulled itself forward. Tilden was ecstatic. The machine was working splendidly. The human in command of the exercise, however, an army colonel, blew a fuse. The colonel ordered the test stopped. Why? Asked Tilden. What's wrong? The colonel just could not stand the pathos of watching the burned, scarred, and crippled machine drag itself forward on its last leg. This test, he charged, was inhumane. Oh, perfect. This is exactly what I was talking about. Scientists in films. This alien or AI is not human and therefore undeserving of any kindness or sympathy. Scientists IRL. This is my friend Robob. He's 5 feet long, has 10 legs, and was built to explode mines, and if anybody hurts him, I will tear apart time and space to get revenge. I haven't read more than 5 books in my lifetime, and they weren't difficult to read books. Now I'm in my mid-20s and found something I'm very interested in, but don't understand 4 to 5 words on every page. Is this normal? I'm reading The Demon-Haunted World by Carl Sagan, and not only does he use vocabulary that I've never seen before, but also uses so many scientific terms and names for people who are in certain professions that I'm not familiar with. So every paragraph I have to whip out my phone and quickly look up the definition to a word. Am I just stupid? I enjoyed the book a lot otherwise, but this vocabulary is out of my league. Credulity, chauvinism, folly, syphilis, thalidomide, chiefly, cauterization, cadavers, all some examples. This is really sad, but it's at least kind of encouraging that he's still trying. Absolutely! The spirit of learning should be nurtured at any age. Read on, Info Warrior! Hey,
This is exactly how you expand your vocabulary, stumbling across new words, looking them up, and then remembering that. And they're still having fun reading the book, so they're probably going to remember the words they pick up. This is good. I see y'all in the notes making fun of this. Don't fucking shame people for learning stuff late. It's not like this guy can go back in time and do more reading as a kid or a teenager. Do you want people to learn new things? Or do you expect everyone to just wallow in ignorance if they weren't lucky enough to be taught things as a kid or teenager? And they don't need an easier book either. If they're engaged with this one and understanding it, they're fine. This is how you learn. Period. I mean, right now I'm reading Yiddish articles on the forward and looking up every fifth word. That's how you learn a language. This is absolutely how you learn shit. Why is it admirable when I did it at 14, but shameful if someone does it as an adult? Spoiler alert, it isn't. I try not to make fun of people for admitting they don't know things, because for each thing everyone knows by the time they're adults, every day there are, on average, 10,000 people in the US hearing about it for the first time. Fraction who have heard of it at birth, 0%. Fraction who have heard of it by 30, 100%. US birth rate, 4 million a year. Number hearing about it for the first time, 10,000 a day. If I make fun of people, I train them not to tell me when they have those moments, and I miss out on the fun. Diet Coke and Mentos thing? What's that? Oh man, come on, we're going to the grocery store. Why? You're one of today's lucky 10,000. Seeing this XKCD comic legitimately changed my worldview for the better. Easy to spot a yellow car when you are always thinking of a yellow car. Easy to spot opportunity when you are always thinking of opportunity. Easy to spot reasons to be mad when you are always thinking of being mad. You become what you constantly think about. Watch yourself. Time to constantly think about getting fucked by a pack of werewolves. This site has one setting. I'm laughing, but there's a super useful corollary, which my husband calls the red balloon. He was a defense lawyer and had a fair number of drug addicts come through. And there is a thing where if you're on your first offense, they'll do a thing where you can go to treatment, and if you complete it, they'll take the conviction off your record. And he would tell his clients, look, everyone's going to tell you not to do drugs. They're going to say it over and over again. And it's like, if people tell you not to think of a white elephant, you're going to think of a white elephant. But the trick to not thinking about a white elephant is to think of a red balloon. So you need to find your red balloon. For some people, it's yoga. For others, it's woodworking. For some people, it's scrapbooking or gardening or any of a long list of things to do. They focus on that. It's a lot easier to succeed in ignoring the white elephant. So yeah, watch yourself is one thing, but the better idea is to watch something else. Even if it's fanfic about werewolves fucking. It's a form of productive dissociation, and is super helpful. It's easy for me to get bogged down in how much pain I'm in, but some of the most painful periods of my life have also been the most productive, writing-wise, because writing is one of my red balloons. There is a phrase I use a lot in my parenting, and my son gets very sick of it, but it's true. The thing you practice is the thing you get good at. You may not intentionally be practicing being grumpy, but if you don't put effort into practicing not being grumpy, then I'm afraid that's what you're doing. It's hard. It's really hard. Sometimes for things, it's pretty much impossible, and that sucks. But being carefully aware that you are going to get good at the things you do most of is a good way to be more careful of what those things are, if that makes sense. You gotta appreciate sometimes how Tumblr works in such a way that everyone who wants to reblog this interesting or useful psychological advice is also forced to reblog the thing about werewolf fucking. Changes and trends in horror genre films are linked to the anxieties of the culture in its time and place. Vampires are the manifestation of grappling with sexuality. Aliens, of foreign influence. Horror from the Cold War is about apathy and annihilation. Classic Japanese horror is characterized by nature's revenge. Psychological horror plays with anxieties that absorbed its audience, like pregnancy and abortion, mental illness, femininity. Some horror presses on the bruises of being trapped in a situation with upsetting tasks to complete, especially ones that compromise you as a person, reflecting the horrors and anxieties of capitalism, etc., etc., etc. Cosmic horror is slightly out of fashion because our culture is more comfortable with, even wistful for, the unknown. Monster horror now has to be aware of itself, as a contingent of people now live in the freedom and comfort of saying, I would willingly, gladly, even preferentially fuck that monster. But I don't know much about films or genres. That ground has been covered by cleverer people. I don't actually like horror or movies. What interests me at the moment is how horror of the 2020s has an element of perception and paying attention. Multiple movies in 1 year discussed monsters that killed you if you perceived them. There are monsters you can't look at. Monsters that kill you instantly if you get their attention. Monsters where you have to be silent, look down, hold still, pray that they pass over you. M-zombies have changed from a hand-waved virus that covers extras and splashy gore to insidious spores. A disaster film is called Don't Look Up. A horror film is called Nope. Even trashy nun horror sets up strange premises of keeping your eyes fixed on something as the devil gets you. No idea if this is anything. I haven't seen any of these things because, unfortunately, I hate them. Someone who understands better than me could say something clever here, and I hope they do. But the thing I'm thinking about is what this will look like to the future, as the Victorian sex vampires and the Cold War anxieties look to us. I think they'll have a little sympathy, but they probably won't. You poor little prey animals, the kids will say. You were awfully afraid of facing up to things, weren't you? I'm like 1 hour from going to bed, so my take is not going to be extensive, but my guess is that the social anxiety this is reflecting is the surveillance state, and the fact that private companies, i.e. not just the state, are also doing a ton of surveillance. And even the fact that the way we often use social media, less so Tumblr, which has some anonymity still, is basically internalizing that surveillance and performing for it at all times. It seems like there are 2 modes going on here. Avoid being perceived by the horror, Bird Box, A Quiet Place, etc., and perform correctly so that the horror can't get you. Your trashy nun example. Both of them arise from surveillance logics. One is avoid being surveilled or it will get you. The other is you are being surveilled, perform correctly, or it will get you. And with regard to the social elements it's all reflecting, I mean, have you seen the state of things? It's extremely difficult to avoid being surveilled. A monster where you have to not look at it is fucking easy mode by comparison. Pretend I cited Michael Foucault and Irving Goffman. They're relevant, but also it's bedtime. Ooh, yes, and breaking it down like this made me think. Fear of observation, surveillance state, fear of not performing correctly, purity culture and evangelical backlashes, fear of confronting existential threat, climate change. My contribution to this extremely salient and clever discussion is to say, I think we should call this subgenre panoptic consequence horror.